Jen Bricker, motivational speaker, acrobat, aerialist, and TV personality.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to tell me a little bit about yourself.
I would say I'm very silly. I love to laugh a lot. I'm not afraid to make a total crazy person of myself. I love being outside. I love puppies so much. Love them so much. I love fashion. I love four-wheeler riding. I love getting dirty in the mud, actually. People don't know that a lot about me. I know how to build things and fix a house and mud and paint and drywall. I love to speak. I love to travel. And I love to meet new people and try new things.
What people might not know is that you were born without legs. So knowing that, it didn't stop you from doing anything when you were a kid. Played several sports, love of gymnastics, all of that. What made you think when you were growing up that all of that was possible?
My parents. I can't tell you how big of a blessing being adopted into the family that I was adopted into was. It was probably the biggest blessing I could have ever had from day one, because they instilled confidence, self-esteem, love, support in every aspect of my life. And that's how, I'm able to think this way. I'm able to overcome obstacles, so to say, and to be able to do what I love for a living, to have the courage and the strength to follow my passion and my heart, to move halfway across the United States by myself. It's all because of my parents instilling those strong morals and values of living. I grew up as the baby. I have 3 older brothers, and so I was the only girl, and I was the youngest by far. My mom had 3 boys, and they were 10, 12, and 14 years old when I was adopted. But she always wanted a baby girl, and she couldn't have kids after my last brother. So 10 years later, then I come along, and they got me. And actually, as a gift or a present to my brothers when I was adopted, my parents let my brothers name me. And my mom and dad actually tell me that each one of them had a special thing that they did with me. So I think it was my oldest brother, I would always lay on his chest when he was studying. My middle brother, he would wear bib overalls a lot, and I was so tiny that I would sit down in the pocket or in the front, and he'd carry me around in them. And then my youngest brother, he was the one that fed me my bottle. That was his thing. And so it was just really cute hearing those things, and I'm fascinated that boys of that age would be so excited to have a younger sister. I would think they'd be excited maybe about a brother, but to have this little, I think I was their shiny toy. Like, hey, look at my little shiny toy. And then, they taught me how to roughhouse, how to get dirty, how to climb trees, how to jump off everything and scare everybody half to death. But I'm really thankful for that, because it balances out my femininity really well. And I think that's a good tool to have, when you're dating a guy and you're interacting with people in life. So my whole life since I was adopted, I grew up going to the Shriners Hospital. In fact, they were the ones that actually gave my parents a completely different perspective and hope. The first set of doctors and hospital that my parents took me to when I was a baby told my parents that I was going to be confined to a bucket the rest of my life. That I would not even be able to sit up on my own at all for the rest of my life. So I was going to be bucket girl the rest of my life. And what they mean by a bucket is it would be this molding of my thighs, my lower body, that would literally keep me upright from going forward or backward or side to side. And my parents just couldn't think, they knew there was more than that. That can't be her future. And so they took me, thankfully, they got a second opinion, and they took me to the Shriners Hospital. And the first thing they told my parents was, Mr. and Mrs. Bricker, she's going to do things that will change your life. She's going to do things that are beyond your wildest imaginations. They got it, obviously. They knew what was up. And so my whole life, until I was 18 years old, I would go to the Shriners Hospital, and they would fit me with prosthetic legs. Now, I never really liked prosthetic legs because, ironically, they didn't make my life easier, they made it more difficult. They were uncomfortable, I had to use, someone to help me walk, or a walker, or something like that. And I never really liked them, but they provided me, as I grew, every time I would grow, they would make a different set of legs. And I had 2 surgeries when I was younger, too. And what the Shriners do is, all of this stuff, prosthetics are thousands of dollars. Everything in the Shriners is free until you're 18 years old. They are an amazing organization, and now as an adult, I want to work and to give back to them as much as they've given to me.
Talk a little bit about sports you played as a kid and some of the accomplishments.
I always had a passion for sports. My first love was gymnastics. I grew up watching that ever since I can remember. And I came to my parents one day and I told them, I want to be a gymnast. And they're like, okay, that's awesome. So, but I grew up in a tiny town, so we didn't have gymnastics, but we had power tumbling. And essentially what power tumbling is, it's like the big floor in gymnastics, but instead of being a big square, it's a long strip, and you just tumble. So back handsprings, flips, twists, things like that. And I competed for 4 years. I was actually good at it. I, 1 year, was state champion of Illinois in my division. And then my fourth and final year of competing, I got to go to the Junior Olympics, the AAU Junior Olympics, and I took fourth all around in my division. But that wasn't the only sport that I loved. I also gave some other sports some love. I played basketball, volleyball, and softball. I competed against all able-bodied athletes. And, you know, I think it was in my genes to be drawn to athletics. My one and only role model that I ever had as a child was Dominique Moceanu, the Olympic gymnast, part of the Magnificent Seven. They were at the Atlantic Games. I mean, it was classic. It's legend. You know, you watch this, and I think every girl within my age range, even 10 to 20 years prior or ahead of me, that was the golden era for gymnastics, especially the Magnificent Seven. And I was no different from everybody else, and drawn to them as a team, but in particular to Dominique Moceanu. So ironically enough, when I was 16 years old, I found out that my childhood idol was my biological sister. Dominique Moceanu was my biological sister. Definitely one of the most mind-blowing things you can ever hear. It's hard to wrap your head around. I think I still and forever will be in awe every day on some level that actually happened and that I'm actually living this life. When we all three met for the very first time, it was, on one hand, absolutely, ironically normal. On the other hand, absolutely surreal. I mean, I'm sitting next to my childhood idol, who's my sister, who's my idol. I mean, it's like, what's going on here, you know? And I remember right after she met me in the airport and we went out to her car, sitting next to her in the front seat, and I literally had a out-of-body experience just for a second. It was as if I was just kind of viewing the situation, because I think it was information overload and I glitched. I just think for a minute I glitched. But it was awesome, you know. And then when I met my younger sister, when she flew in, we were like twins. It was like looking in the mirror. We looked alike, we sounded alike, we liked the same foods, the same kind of guys, everything. It was mind-blowing. Still is mind-blowing. And, you know, after meeting biological sisters, and I never had sisters, I always had brothers, and I always wanted sisters to balance me out on the girly side. And so now I have two, and it's awesome. I can talk makeup and hair and guys and this and that. And it's a totally different relationship than you have with brothers. So I think, you know, my life definitely has changed in a way of just being maybe more rounded out, more fulfilled in a certain aspect of my life, and being able to have a relationship with sisters that I never was able to have. It's pretty cool, and being around people who have the same DNA as you is so cool, because I never got to see anybody who looked like me or had the same mannerisms, and that still to this day is so cool for me. Yeah, my parents' philosophy about really, you know, doing whatever you want and believing in yourself has absolutely translated. I think more in my brother's personal lives than in my career life is a little more apparent. They all live in the same area back where I'm from, and but what I love about my brothers is that every single one of them are an extremely active father, and they all primarily have girls. And they're doing their hair, they're braiding, they're doing their makeup, they do everything. They're at every sport event, every little play they have, and they're family is very important to them. The things that really matter are what really matters. And the thing that I love about all of my family, which stems from my parents, is that we will always figure out a way to make it work. I think at the end of the day, whether, you know, whatever jobs we have or whatever different directions we all go as siblings, that's the one thing we all have in common, is that when we're gonna fight our way out of something. If we're down, if we're really low, we're always gonna find a way to figure it out. There's never a time where it's like, that's absolute, there's nothing can be done. I don't think any of us think like that. And we always manage to not take ourselves too seriously and totally give each other a hard time, which is fun, but it's such a fun environment to be in.
Can you describe to us what you're doing now professionally, what an Acrobat Aerialist does?
Yeah, for the past 5 years I've been primarily performing professionally as an acrobat and an aerialist, and now a lot more in the past year and a half as a speaker and TV personality. Now what an acrobat is, the acrobat side is if you're tumbling or doing trampoline, anything there's flipping involved or essentially gymnastics, that's more of the acrobat side. And the aerialist side is, people usually relate to Cirque du Soleil when you see the silk fabric hanging and people are twisting and spinning and contorting inside of it. That's essentially what an aerialist is. And you can also do different apparatuses in the air, and they all are pretty much underneath the aerialist category. You have lyra, straps, silks, a lot of different apparatus for the air. And my speaking career, I've really grown into loving speaking at all different venues. I speak at churches and schools and corporate events, and even within the schools they vary. And I really have a heart and a passion for that. And my end goal is to be a TV talk show host, TV personality.
I saw your act described as floating above ground. Is that what it feels like?
I think when you're actually doing it, you're thinking about all the mechanics behind it, and then you're performing it as well. But you have to, when you're performing it and you're actually in the air, you're making sure that your lock is right, your grip is right. When I'm performing with a partner, making sure that we're in sync and we're connected, and making sure that the function side of it is working, because that is how it, is to be made to look effortless. But sometimes when I'm really high, when we use a motor, sometimes there's a motor in the ceiling and it can raise the silk so you can be very high, sometimes 30 or 40 feet in the air. And that's when it's the most fun for me, because then you do feel like you're flying. And sometimes you are, essentially, it is called flying silks. And then when you have a moment to just fly and be free, it really does feel like I'm floating.
Is there a safety net or safety precautions?
No, there's no safety net. You just have to make sure you don't fall.
What would you say was the best piece of advice you ever received, and from whom?
The best piece of advice is from my parents. It's very cut and dry. If you want to do something, do it. Put your mind to it and do it. Like, it's as simple as that. And I think that's the whole foundation of how I live and how I function. And only because of that advice and because of that way of thinking have I been able to achieve my dreams, to live the life that I want, to travel the world, to interact with people I never in my life would have met had I just stayed in that hometown with my comfortable life. I'm Jen Bricker, acrobat, aerialist, motivational speaker, and I'm pretty tough.